$100 is not a starting point. It is a mirror, and most people look away from it because what it reflects is not their poverty but their architecture. The real distance between where you are and where the wealthy operate is not measured in dollars. It has never been. The financial world has spent decades selling you a distraction. Not a lie. Distraction is more sophisticated than a lie. A lie can be disproven. A distraction keeps you measuring the wrong variable until you stop asking the right question. The right question is never how much you have. It is what structure you are operating inside, and whether that structure was designed to hold you in place or move you forward. Machiavelli wrote that men are driven either by fortune or by virtue, by the conditions they inherit, or by the strategic intelligence they apply against those conditions. What most people call financial planning is hoping fortune improves on its own schedule. What the wealthy understand is that virtue, in Machiavelli's sense, is deliberate architecture, behavior built before the money arrives, not adjusted after it does. The first pattern is one almost no one names honestly. You have been trained to treat money as a destination rather than a mechanism. Wealth is not a place you reach once the number gets large enough. It is a system of compounding decisions, and systems do not respond to balance. They respond to structure. The person who builds a functioning financial architecture on $100 is not rehearsing until the real money arrives. They are already operating in the exact psychological register as someone managing $100,000. What changes is the number. What does not change is the behavior that governs it. The wealthy do not wait until a balance feels serious before behaving seriously. They built the behavior first and let the number follow at its own pace. Most people are still waiting for a number that feels like permission to begin. That number never comes, not because the money doesn't arrive, but because the permission was always internal and the wealthy simply issued it earlier. The second pattern runs deeper and extracts a cost most people never see on a statement. Scarcity does not just describe your balance. It colonizes your decision-making at the level of instinct. When you operate inside a scarcity frame, and most people do, regardless of their actual income, every decision becomes optimized for immediate relief rather than structural gain. You choose the option that quiets the anxiety today. The purchase that makes this week feel survivable at the cost of next year feeling identical. Wealthy people are not immune to this pressure. What separates them is a structural counter-mechanism, a set of pre-committed rules that intercept the scarcity response before it reaches the point of decision. Not willpower, not discipline in the motivational sense. Architecture, rules made in clarity, designed to govern behavior in pressure. The question is never whether you have $100. The question is whether you have built anything that protects your decisions from your own worst instincts. And if the honest answer is no, that is not a character failure. That is a design flaw, and design flaws are corrected through redesign, not self-punishment. Stop here for a moment. Not to take notes, to do something harder than that. Think about the last financial decision you made under stress. Not necessarily a large one. One you made quickly because not deciding felt worse than deciding badly. Now ask yourself, what was the actual cost? Not in currency, in structure, in what it damaged, in whatever you were quietly trying to build. Most people who sit with this honestly discover that the amount was never the damage. The precedent was. Every time you override your own financial architecture under pressure, you make it fractionally easier to do it again. The structure does not collapse in a single moment of crisis. It erodes in the dozen small surrenders that precede the crisis, each one invisible, each one compounding. This is not about what you did wrong. It is about recognizing a pattern that cannot be interrupted until it is first seen without flinching. The third pattern is the most expensive one, and it will never appear on any financial statement you have ever been shown. Identity is the hidden cost center of most people's financial lives. You spend in patterns that confirm who you believe yourself to be, not who you want to be eventually, but who you believe you are right now, beneath every plan you have ever made. The The person who carries beneath all their intention and effort the quiet conviction that they are someone who cannot hold onto money will not hold onto money, not as punishment, as confirmation. The mind is precise and efficient at proving to itself that what it already believes is true. Wealthy people have, consciously or otherwise, anchored their identity not to an outcome but to a behavior. They are not people who have money. They are people who manage it, regardless of the current number. That single shift from outcome identity to behavior identity changes what becomes automatic. And what becomes automatic is what the person next to you, working just as hard, can never replicate, because they are still waiting to feel like the kind of person who deserves to begin. The fourth pattern explains why intelligence is not enough and why knowing more rarely changes anything. Information is not the problem. If information solved financial struggle, the internet would have ended it by now. The actual problem is the gap, what Machiavelli identified in every leader who ultimately lost, the inability to act on what is already clearly known. Knowledge without implementation is, at best, entertainment. And the financial content industry is extraordinarily well constructed to produce high-quality entertainment that leaves you informed and structurally unchanged. Here is what the wealthy do differently. They have built an implementation reflex, not motivation reflex, a conditioned bias toward action that treats understanding as a trigger for behavior, not a substitute for it. When they learn something that applies to their situation, the interval between understanding and doing is measured in hours, not months. That gap, the one between knowing and acting, is not closed by learning more. It is closed by deciding once that you will be someone who acts before the feeling of readiness arrives. The fifth pattern is the most dangerous because from the inside it feels like patience, almost stable, almost ready to start, almost earning enough to make the decisions that matter. Almost is the psychological state the financial system is most precisely designed to sustain, because almost keeps you consuming without ever accumulating. The almost stable person carries just enough credit to feel capable without building ownership, spends just enough to feel like life is functional without creating anything that compounds, works hard enough to survive without ever generating leverage. What separates the wealthy from the almost is not a larger number. It is a specific decision made before they felt ready, often before they had any evidence it would work, to exit the almost state permanently. The wealthy do not wait for readiness. They understand at some point that readiness is a feeling the system dispenses only after you have already moved. It is a reward for the decision, not a condition for it. And the almost ready feeling you have been carrying, however long you have been carrying it, is not a signal that the conditions are not right. It is the sound the trap makes when it is working exactly as designed. The architecture you build right now, from $100, from whatever you actually have, is the same architecture you will be operating inside when the balance is 10 times larger. Habit structures do not rescale automatically with income. You do not graduate into financial discipline when circumstances improve. Machiavelli understood this when he observed that the wise man builds his defenses in calm weather, not because disaster is certain, but because the structure built in stability is the only one that holds when the pressure arrives. You build it now, in conditions that feel too small to matter, or you rebuild it later, in conditions that are considerably less forgiving. You have been waiting for enough evidence to justify beginning. The wealthy do not require evidence first. They are a specific kind of person, one who builds the structure before the outcome confirms it was worth building. That is the only kind of person financial freedom has ever been available to. And that person is not the one who subscribed to this channel for motivation. That person subscribed because they recognize themselves in a different category entirely, the category of people who are already building and want the blueprint that the other side of the wall has always used. The $100 was never about the $100. It was always the moment you stopped waiting for permission and became someone who had already decided.